The dirty girl reached for a ring, and the clerk snapped, "Get your hands off that now." She froze, eyes trembling, then quietly said something no one expected. The whisper stopped, and within seconds the entire store fell into stunned silence. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. The screen door slammed behind Crystal with a tired sigh. Her Aunt Darlene's voice followed her out into the late afternoon air. "I left $20 on the counter for pizza, honey. My shift at the hospital starts at 6. I will be home very, very late." Crystal did not turn around. She just nodded, tracing a small circle on her palm with her finger. "Okay." "Did you eat the sandwich I made you?" Darlene asked, her voice already sounding far away. Crystal looked at her worn sneakers. "Yes," she whispered, which was not true. The bread had felt too thick in her mouth. She had fed most of it to the birds in the tiny backyard. "Good girl, don't wander too far," her aunt said. A moment later, Crystal heard the car start and drive away. She was alone again. It was a feeling as familiar as her own skin. She had been alone for a year, ever since the day her mother did not wake up. The doctor had used long, complicated words, but Crystal understood only one: gone. Now she lived with Aunt Darlene in a small apartment that always smelled of old laundry and microwave meals. Darlene was kind, but she was always working, her eyes holding a permanent tiredness. Crystal tried very hard not to be another thing for her aunt to worry about. So she wandered. She walked the same path she always walked. Down Elm Street, past the library with the broken window on the second floor, across the park where the old swing squeaked. Maplewood, Ohio was a quiet town where nothing ever seemed to happen twice. The streets were clean. The shops were tidy. People smiled small, polite smiles. To Crystal, it all felt like a picture she was standing outside of. Her feet carried her toward Main Street. She did not have a plan. She never did. She just moved, her light brown ponytail bouncing slightly, her shoulders curved inward, as if to make herself smaller. As she walked, her thumb rubbed over her bare ring finger. It was a habit. Her mother, Amelia, had worn a ring every single day. It was silver, with a single blue stone the color of the summer sky. Crystal could picture it perfectly. She could feel the cool metal of it when her mother had held her hand. She could see the way it caught the light when her mother waved goodbye from the front door. After her mother died, the ring disappeared. Crystal had looked everywhere in their old little house, in drawers, under the bed, in the pockets of her mother's coats. It was just gone. It felt like losing her mother all over again. She had nothing to hold on to. She stopped walking. She found herself in front of a store window. The words, "Maplewood Jewelers," were written in fancy gold letters. Crystal never looked in this window. Pretty things behind glass did not interest her. But today, her eyes drifted across the display. They passed over strands of pearls and gold chains. Then they stopped. On a small black stand all by itself was a ring. Crystal's breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to beat very fast. She took a small step closer, her nose almost touching the cool glass. It was a silver ring. It had a single blue stone. It looked exactly like her mother's ring. For a full minute, she did not move. The sounds of the town faded away. There was only the ring and the pounding in her ears. It was not just similar, it was the same. The way the silver band twisted, the way the stone was set, the exact blue. A deep, aching want filled her chest, so strong it hurt. She had not touched anything of her mother's in a whole year. Her fingers, still dusty from the park bench, lifted toward the window. She just wanted to see it up close. She needed to be sure. Her eyes flicked from the ring to the inside of the shop. It looked quiet. An old man stood behind a counter, his back to her. Without another thought, Crystal's hand reached for the heavy door handle. She took a deep breath and pushed it open, a little bell ringing above her head. The little bell above the door jingled, a sound too cheerful for the heavy quiet inside. Crystal froze just over the threshold. The air was cool and smelled like lemons and metal. The lights were very bright, making everything on the velvet trays sparkle. An old man behind the main glass counter turned. He had silver hair and glasses. He looked at her, his eyes moving from her face to her worn sneakers. He did not smile. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was not unkind, but it was not warm either. It was a voice for business. Crystal's mouth felt dry. She shook her head quickly, her words stuck in her throat. She just wanted to look, not to talk. Very well, the man said. He turned his attention back to a small watch he was holding with a special tool. Feeling invisible again, Crystal let out a small breath. She moved slowly, her sneakers making no sound on the plush carpet. There were other people in the store. A man in a suit looked at bracelets. A woman in a blue jacket talked softly with a younger woman behind another counter. A large security guard stood near the door, his arms crossed. Crystal did not look at them. Her eyes were pulled straight to the left side of the store. There, in a glass case by itself, was the ring. Her feet carried her toward it. Up close, it was even more perfect. The silver was bright. The blue stone seemed to hold a tiny light inside it. It sat on a black velvet pillow, waiting. She stopped in front of the case, her hands hanging at her sides. She leaned forward slowly until her forehead almost touched the cool glass. This close, she could see every detail. The little grooves in the band, the way the stone was held by tiny silver claws. It was her mother's ring. She was sure of it. Her heart felt so big it hurt. Without thinking, her right hand lifted. Her fingers, which had been tracing circles on her palm, stretched out. She just wanted to touch the glass above it, to feel close to it. "Hey!" The word was sharp, like a crack of ice. Crystal flinched, her whole body jumping back, her arms wrapped around herself. The old man, Mr. Henderson, was staring right at her from across the store. His eyebrows were lowered. "Don't touch that. Step away from the case," he said, his voice loud in the quiet room. Every person in the store stopped and looked. The man in the suit paused. The woman in the blue jacket turned. The security guard uncrossed his arms. Crystal felt her face grow hot. Tears, sudden and stinging, flooded her eyes. She wanted to run, but her feet were stuck to the carpet. She looked from Mr. Henderson's stern face to the beautiful, impossible ring, and then down at the floor. A single tear dripped onto the toe of her sneaker. The store was silent. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words were so soft they were almost just air, but in the perfect quiet, everyone heard them. "It looks just like my mom's ring." Mr. Henderson's stern expression did not change, but he didn't say anything else. Crystal took a shaky breath, her shoulders trembling. She kept her eyes on the carpet. "She died last year. I just wanted to see it." The silence that followed was different. It was not a sharp silence. It was a thick, heavy silence. The man in the suit looked down at the bracelets, not seeing them. The woman in the blue jacket brought a hand to her mouth. Mr. Henderson stood very still behind his counter. He looked at the small, sad girl in the dirty sneakers. He looked at her trembling shoulders. His own face seemed to grow older. Before he could speak, the younger woman from the other counter was moving. She had kind eyes and auburn hair tied back. Her name was Sarah. She walked over to Crystal, her steps slow and calm. "Hey there," Sarah said, her voice gentle. She didn't touch Crystal, but she knelt down a little so she wasn't so tall. "What's your name?" Crystal wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "Crystal," she whispered. "It's nice to meet you, Crystal," Sarah said. She glanced at the ring in the case, then back at Crystal's tear-streaked face. "That's a very pretty ring. Can you tell me about your mom's ring? Did it look just like this one?" Crystal nodded, another tear falling. She pointed a faint finger toward the case without looking up. "It was the same, exactly the same. She wore it every day. I don't know where it is now." Her voice broke on the last word. Sarah's own eyes grew shiny. She looked over at Mr. Henderson. His mouth was a tight line. He was staring at a spot on his clean counter, not at the ring, not at the girl. He looked like he was seeing something else, something far away. Sarah turned back to Crystal. "Why don't you come sit over here for a minute, sweetheart? Just for a minute." She gestured to a small plush chair near the wall. Crystal, confused and embarrassed, let Sarah guide her to the chair. She sat on the very edge of it, her body still curled in on itself. She could feel everyone still looking at her. The security guard, Ben, had taken a small step forward, his face full of concern. Mr. Henderson finally moved. He walked slowly from behind his counter. He did not look at his customers. His eyes were on the bluestone ring in its glass case. He stopped in front of it, his long, clean fingers resting on the edge of the display. For a long time, he just stared at the ring, his expression unreadable. The entire store waited to see what the old man would do next. Mr. Henderson's hand, resting on the glass case, had trembled just a little. The silence in the store was so complete he could hear the soft hum of the lights above. He looked from the ring to the girl, Crystal, curled in the chair. Her small frame seemed to carry a weight he recognized all too well. He cleared his throat, the sound rough in the quiet. I spoke too harshly, he said. His voice was lower now, not the sharp bark from before. He took off his glasses and polished them slowly with a cloth from his pocket, not looking at anyone. It is a rule, no touching the glass, but a rule does not need a harsh word. Sarah gave him a small, understanding nod. She pulled a tissue from her own pocket and offered it to Crystal. It's okay, she said softly. Can you tell me your mom's name? Crystal took the tissue and held it tightly in her fist. Amelia, she whispered. Her name was Amelia. Amelia, Sarah repeated, smiling gently. That's a beautiful name. What was she like? A tiny light flickered in Crystal's wet eyes. She was nice. She used to read to me. She worked at the grocery store, putting things on shelves. She always smelled like soap and apples. Her words came out in a soft rush, like she had been holding them in for a long time. The ring was her favorite thing. She said her own mom gave it to her. She never took it off. Ever. Mr. Henderson listened. He had put his glasses back on. He was looking at a photograph on the far wall of the store, an old picture of him and a young woman smiling, his daughter Lisa. He had not spoken to her in 10 years. The last words between them had been harsh words, rules he had insisted on. He felt a familiar cold stone of regret in his stomach. The man in the suit quietly placed the bracelet he was holding back on the tray and walked toward the door. He gave a respectful nod to Mr. Henderson as he left. The woman in the blue blazer stayed, her eyes soft with shared sadness. Ben, the security guard, shifted on his feet. He watched the old man's face. He saw the struggle there, the hard lines of a lifetime of strictness fighting with a new, painful feeling. Sarah reached out and very gently placed a hand on Crystal's knee. Do you have anything of hers now? Anything to remember her by? Crystal shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. No, nothing. We had to move. Things got lost. I can't find the ring. I just have pictures in my head. That was it for Mr. Henderson. The words nothing and lost echoed in the quiet space. He saw his own daughter's face. He saw all the things he had let become lost between them. He stood up straight. With a decisive movement, he took a small key ring from his pocket. He found a silver key and walked back to the case with the blue stone ring. His hands were steady now. He inserted the key into a small lock on the side of the case. There was a soft asterisk click asterisk. Everyone watched. Sarah's hand went to her chest. Ben took a step closer, not to stop it, but as if to bear witness. Mr. Henderson lifted the glass lid. He reached in with 2 careful fingers and picked up the ring. It sparkled under the bright lights. He turned and walked over to where Crystal sat. Crystal looked up, her eyes wide and confused. She shrank back a little, afraid she was in more trouble. Mr. Henderson knelt down. It was a slow, stiff movement for a man his age. He was now eye level with the girl. He held the ring in the palm of his open hand. This is not a rule a store should have, he said, his voice gruff but gentle. A child should have something of her mother. He took Crystal's small, dirty hand in his own clean one. He turned her palm up and placed the silver ring in its center. The blue stone caught the light. Crystal stared at it. She could not speak. Your mother would want you to have something beautiful, Mr. Henderson said. To remember her by. It is yours. A sob broke from Crystal's chest. She closed her fingers carefully around the ring, holding it as if it were a living thing. Then she looked at Mr. Henderson, her hazel eyes full of a gratitude so vast it hurt to see. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you so much. Slowly, she slid the ring onto her finger. It was too big. It spun around loosely, but her face lit up with a pure, radiant joy that changed the entire room. She held her hand out, staring at it. Sarah wiped a tear from her own cheek. Mr. Henderson stood up, his knees cracking. He did not smile, but the tightness around his eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, weary peace. Crystal stood, her whole being focused on the ring on her hand. She looked at Sarah, then back at Mr. Henderson. I will take good care of it. I promise. I know you will, Mr. Henderson said. He watched as Crystal, moving as if in a dream, walked slowly to the door. She kept looking at her hand. The bell jingled again as she left, the sound softer this time. The store was quiet once more. Sarah let out a long breath. "Walter," she said softly. Mr. Henderson walked back behind his counter. He picked up his polishing cloth and began to clean a spotless tray. His hands were shaking again. "Do not say it, Sarah. The paperwork will be a mess." But there was no anger in his voice. Ben watched the door where Crystal had left. He saw the look on the old man's face, a look of painful relief. He saw Sarah's proud smile. He thought of the girl's joy, so bright after so much sadness. For the first time in a long time, Ben Miller felt like he had seen something truly good. He hoped for all their sakes that it would stay that way. The ring did not leave Crystal's finger for 7 whole days. She slept with it on. She washed her hands carefully, worried the soap would hurt the stone. When she helped Aunt Darlene set the table, the loose band would spin, and she would stop to push it back into place, a small, secret smile on her face. On Thursday afternoon, she sat on the park swing, not swinging, just dragging her toes in the dirt. She held her hand up, letting the sunlight hit the blue stone. "It's you, Mom," she whispered to the empty air. "I have a part of you again." For the first time in a year, the hollow space inside her chest did not feel entirely empty. The ring was an anchor, a tiny, solid piece of love. At the same time, inside Maplewood Jewelers, Walter Henderson was at his counter. He was polishing a tray of wedding bands, a task he did every day. But his mind was not on his work. He kept glancing at the now empty spot in the case by the window. He felt a strange feeling. It was not regret about the cost of the ring. It was a nervousness, a feeling that he had stepped outside of his own careful rules. He had not written anything down. He had just given it away. Sarah noticed his quiet mood. "You did a good thing, Walter," she said, arranging a new necklace display. "It was an irregular thing," he replied, not looking up. "The ledger is what matters. Facts. Some facts are about people's hearts," Sarah said gently. Before Walter could answer, the front door burst open. The bell jangled violently. A man strode in. He was tall with a red face. He wore a nice coat, but it was wrinkled. His name was Victor Cray. He marched right up to Walter's counter. "You," he said, pointing a finger. "Henderson." Walter put down his polishing cloth. His professional mask slid into place. "Mr. Cray, how can I help you?" "You can help me by telling me where my ring is." Victor's voice was loud. Ben, the security guard, straightened up by the door, watching carefully. Walter blinked. "I am sorry? Which ring?" "The silver ring. The one with the blue sapphire. The one I put a $100 deposit on 2 months ago. The one you promised to hold for my wife's birthday." Victor's words came out in an angry rush. He slammed his hand on the counter. "I came in today to finish paying for it. It's gone from the case." A cold wave washed over Walter. His mouth went dry. "The blue stone ring?" "Yes, my ring," Victor yelled. "I had a layaway plan. You wrote it in your book. Look in your book." Walter's hands were not steady as he pulled the large, leather-bound ledger from under the counter. He flipped through the pages. His eyes scanned the entries. Near the back, he saw it. *V, Cray Depp, $100 silver blue sapphire orang layaway. He felt the blood drain from his face. He had forgotten, completely forgotten. The layaway was for a different, similar ring that had sold last month. Or was it? A fog of confusion settled over him. The records from the time after the store's burglary years ago were a messy patchwork. He had made a mistake. "You see?" Victor snarled, tapping the page. "That's my ring, and it's not in your case. Did you sell it? Did you steal from me?" "I did not steal anything," Walter said, but his voice lacked its usual firmness. He thought of Crystal's joyful face. He had given away a ring that was promised to someone else. The good feeling from a week ago curdled into a sickening dread. Sarah came over, her face pale. "Mr. Cray, please, let's talk about this calmly." "Calm? I will not be calm. That was my wife's gift." He turned back to Walter. "I want that ring, or I want my money back right now, and then I am calling the police. This is theft." At that moment, the front door opened. Crystal walked in. She had come to show Mr. Henderson how she had tied a little piece of blue thread around the band to make it fit better. Her smile vanished when she saw the angry man. heard the loud words. Walter saw her. His eyes widened in panic. Victor followed his gaze. He saw a young girl in old clothes. He saw the silver ring with a blue stone on her finger. He stared. His anger seemed to freeze, then boil over hotter. "Is that it?" he whispered, his voice dangerous. He pointed a shaking finger at Crystal's hand. "Is that my ring on that child's finger?" Crystal's other hand flew to cover the ring. She took a step back, her eyes huge with terror. She looked at Mr. Henderson's frightened face, then at the furious man. "You gave my ring to some random kid?" Victor roared. He pulled a cell phone from his pocket. "That's it. I am calling the police right now." Crystal stood frozen in the middle of the store. The ring on her finger, her beautiful piece of heaven, now felt like a burning coal. The police were coming. They would take it. They would take Mr. Henderson away. It was all her fault. The word police hung in the air like a thunderclap. Crystal's legs felt like they might buckle. She saw Mr. Henderson's pale, stunned face. Sarah was trying to speak to Victor Cray, but his voice was too loud. "Yes, I'm at Maplewood Jewelers on Main Street," Victor said into his phone, his eyes locked on Crystal's hand. "I want to report a theft. The store owner gave away property that was legally mine." Walter Henderson finally found his voice. "Mr. Cray, please. This is a misunderstanding. Let us discuss this." "Discuss what?" "My ring is on her finger," Victor snapped, pointing again. He ended the call. "They're coming. We can discuss it with them." Crystal felt a hot rush of shame. She was the her. She was the problem. Her fingers fumbled with the ring, the blue thread tangling. She pulled it off. The metal was warm from her skin. She took 2 small, shaky steps forward and held it out to Victor Cray. Her hand trembled. "Here," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You can have it. Please don't let him be in trouble because of me." Victor looked at the ring in her small, dirty palm. For a second, his anger seemed to waver, replaced by confusion. But then his face hardened again. "It's too late for that. The police are coming. This isn't just about the ring now. It's about the principal." Walter came out from behind the counter. He gently closed Crystal's fingers over the ring. "No, child, you keep it. I gave it to you. This is my mistake to fix, not yours." He looked at Victor. "The error is in my ledger, my confusion. The girl is not at fault." Ben moved from his post by the door. He walked over, positioning himself slightly between the angry man and the others. His voice was low and calm. "Mr. Cray, the officers will be here soon. Why don't you and Mr. Henderson have a seat over there? Let's all try to stay calm until they arrive." Victor glared but allowed Ben to guide him to a small seating area. Walter followed, moving slowly as if every step hurt. Sarah hurried over to Crystal, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Come with me, honey. Let's go to the back room for a minute." Crystal shook her head, her eyes fixed on Mr. Henderson's stooped back. "I want to stay. I have to tell them it was my fault." "It wasn't your fault," Sarah said firmly. But she led Crystal to a chair behind a different counter, away from Victor's direct line of sight. Within minutes, 2 police officers entered the store. They were serious looking, a man and a woman. Victor stood up immediately and started talking, his words fast and sharp. Walter tried to explain, his voice quieter, full of frustration. Crystal watched from her chair. She heard pieces of the conversation. Layaway plan. Store inventory. Gifted it to a minor. One of the officers, the woman, came over to Sarah and Crystal. She knelt down. "Hi, my name is Officer Lewis. What's your name?" "Crystal," she mumbled, looking at her lap. "Can you tell me about the ring, Crystal?" Crystal's throat was too tight. She just nodded, holding her closed fist against her chest. "She got it last week," Sarah explained softly. "Her mother passed away last year. The ring looked just like her mother's." Walter, Mr. Henderson, was moved by her story. He meant it as an act of kindness. Officer Lewis nodded, her face neutral. She stood and walked back to the other officer. They talked in low voices with Victor and Walter for a long time. They looked at the ledger. Victor showed a paper from his wallet, a receipt for his deposit. Finally, the male officer approached Crystal. "We're going to need to take the ring for now, young lady. It's part of the investigation." A quiet sob escaped Crystal's lips. She opened her hand. The ring sat there, so small and shining. She didn't want to let it go. It felt like losing her mother all over again. With a final shuddering breath, She placed it in the officer's outstretched hand. He put it in a small, clear plastic bag. "We'll get this all sorted out," he said, but his words felt empty to her. The officers finished writing notes. They told Victor and Walter they would be in touch. They left, taking the ring in the bag with them. The store was quiet once more. Victor shot a last disgusted look at Walter. "I expect a full refund by tomorrow," he said, and marched out. Walter sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Sarah walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Crystal stood up. Her whole body felt heavy. She walked to where Mr. Henderson sat. "I'm so sorry," she said, fresh tears on her cheeks. "I'll tell them it was all my idea. I don't want you to go to jail." Walter looked up. His eyes were tired and sad. "You will do no such thing, Crystal. You have done nothing wrong. This is my confusion, my old, messy records." He sighed a deep, weary sigh. "Go home now. Your aunt will be worried." Crystal wanted to argue, but she had no words left. She just nodded. She looked at her empty hand, at the faint mark where the ring had been. Then she turned and walked out of the store, into a town that no longer felt safe. Crystal did not go straight home. She walked without seeing, her empty hand clenched into a tight fist. She passed the coffee shop. Two women sat near the window. One of them pointed subtly in Crystal's direction and leaned in to whisper. Crystal hurried past, her cheeks burning. At the small grocery store, old Mrs. Green was talking to the cashier. Her voice carried out the open door. A shame, really. That poor man, Walter. To be taken advantage of like that by a clever child. Sentiment clouded his judgment. Crystal felt the words like little cuts. She ducked her head and crossed the street. Near the park bench, two men in work clothes were talking. "Nah, I heard the kid's story is true," one said. "Her mom died. Henderson did a decent thing. That Cray fellow is just throwing his weight around." "Decent or not, you can't just give away paid-for merchandise," the other man replied. "Rules are rules." The old man messed up. Crystal slipped past them, a silent ghost. The town of Maplewood was no longer just quiet. It was full of eyes and opinions, and she was at the center of all of them. She felt split in two. Part of her was the sad girl everyone whispered about. The other part was the thief some people thought she was. When she finally pushed open the apartment door, Aunt Darlene was already home, still in her nurse's scrubs. Her face was tight with worry. She'd heard. "Crystal, honey, sit down," Darlene said, her voice gentle but strained. "Mrs. Callahan from down the street called me. She said there was trouble at the jewelry store. She said the police were there. Is that true?" Crystal nodded, sinking into a kitchen chair. She stared at the checkered tablecloth. "Did you take something, Crystal?" Darlene asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can tell me the truth." The question made Crystal look up, her eyes wide with hurt. "No, I didn't steal. Mr. Henderson gave it to me. He felt bad because I was sad about Mom. He was being nice." Her chin trembled. "But a man said it was his. The police took it away. They think Mr. Henderson is a thief because of me." Darlene let out a long breath and sat down across from her. She reached out and held Crystal's hands. "Oh, sweetie, this is such a mess." She shook her head. "That ring, did it really look like your mom's?" "It was the same," Crystal said, her voice firm with conviction. "Exactly the same." Darlene looked thoughtful for a moment, then squeezed her hands. "Listen to me. People are going to talk. They might say mean things. You have to be strong. You did nothing wrong. But maybe it's better if we just stay away from that store for a while, okay?" Crystal pulled her hands back. "But Mr. Henderson is in trouble. I can't just stay away. We have to let the police sort it out, Crystal. Getting more involved won't help." Darlene's voice was firm now. "Promise me you won't go back there." Crystal didn't promise. She just looked down at her lap, tracing a circle on her palm. The next day, the buzz in the town was louder. In Maplewood Jewelers, the phone rang all morning. "Yes, the store is still open," Sarah said patiently for the 5th time. "No, mister. Henderson is not in jail. It was a misunderstanding." She hung up and rubbed her temples. Walter was in the back room, trying to sort through old ledger boxes. His movements were slow, defeated. The sharp, orderly man was gone, replaced by a tired old one haunted by a mistake. Ben Miller watched the street from his post. He saw the curious looks from people passing by. He heard snippets of conversations. He thought about Crystal's face when the officer took the ring. It wasn't the face of a clever trickster. It was the face of a heartbroken kid. He thought about Walter, a man who valued rules above all, breaking them for one soft moment. The pieces didn't fit for Ben. A strict jeweler doesn't give away expensive inventory on a whim. A sad girl doesn't mastermind a theft in front of 4 witnesses. Victor Cray's anger felt real, but so did Walter's confusion. During a quiet moment, Ben walked over to Sarah. "How's he holding up?" he asked, nodding toward the back room. Sarah sighed. "Not good. He's buried in old papers, trying to find some proof he's not crazy. He's not eating." Ben tapped his pen twice against his leg, a habit. "And the girl? Crystal?" "Her aunt called to check on things," Sarah said. "She's keeping her home. The poor thing must be miserable." Ben looked out the window again. He saw the town divided, a life disrupted, and 2 good people suffering. He thought about his old job, about looking for the truth in the mess. A feeling he hadn't felt in a long time stirred. The need to fix something. "Sarah," he said, his voice quiet but decided, "I think I might go for a walk on my break. Clear my head." Sarah gave him a curious look but nodded. Ben took off his security jacket. He wasn't going for a walk. He was going to start asking his own questions. He needed to talk to Crystal's aunt. The apartment building was quiet in the middle of the afternoon. Ben Miller stood outside the door marked number 4. He took a deep breath and knocked softly. After a moment, the door opened. A woman in nurse's scrubs looked out. She had kind but tired eyes. "Can I help you?" "Miss Darlene? My name is Ben Miller. I'm the security guard from Maplewood Jewelers. I was hoping I could talk to you for a few minutes about Crystal." Darlene's face tightened with worry. She glanced back into the apartment. "Is there more trouble?" No, Ben said quickly, holding up a hand. "Nothing like that. I was there that day. I saw what happened. Something about the whole situation doesn't sit right with me. I want to help sort it out if I can." Darlene studied his face. She saw the concern there, not the judgment she'd been bracing for. She sighed and opened the door wider. "Come in. Crystal's in her room. She doesn't want to come out much." The apartment was small and tidy, but cluttered with the stuff of 2 lives crammed into one space. Ben sat on the edge of the sofa. "How is she holding up?" "Not good," Darlene said, sitting across from him. "She barely talks. She just stares at her hand where that ring was. She thinks she ruined that nice old man's life." "She didn't ruin anything," Ben said, his voice firm. "Mr. Henderson made his own choice, but I think there's more to this story. Crystal was so sure the ring was her mother's. You said it looked the same?" "She was convinced," Darlene nodded. "Crystal doesn't lie about things like that. Not about her mom." Ben leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Miss Darlene, this might sound strange, but would it be possible for me to see your sister's old house, the one she and Crystal lived in? I'm just looking for context, anything that might help clarify things." Darlene looked surprised. "The old house? It's empty. We packed up what we could, but a lot of Amelia's things are still there in boxes. The landlord hasn't cleaned it out yet." She paused, thinking. "Why do you want to go there?" "I don't know exactly," Ben admitted. "But when I was a police officer, sometimes the answer wasn't in the loud argument. It was in the quiet details left behind. I have a feeling about this. I just want to look." Darlene was quiet for a long moment. She looked toward the closed bedroom door where Crystal was. "She deserves to have something of her mother's," she said softly. "If there's even a chance, okay, I'll take you. Let me get the key." The little house on Oak Street was a sad sight. The grass was too long, the paint was peeling. It had the lonely feeling of a place left behind. Darlene unlocked the front door. The air inside was still and dusty. "I haven't had the heart to finish clearing it out," she said, her voice echoing in the empty living room. "Her bedroom is down the hall. A lot of her personal things are in boxes in the closet." "Thank you," Ben said. "I'll be respectful." He started in the small bedroom. He moved slowly, methodically. He opened drawers that were already empty. He looked on shelves. He found old magazines, a hairbrush, a single earring, nothing about a ring. He moved to the closet. There were 2 cardboard boxes. He opened the first one. It held clothes. He felt through the pockets of coats and dresses. He found a tissue, a stick of gum, but no ring. The second box was heavier. It held books, photo albums, and a small wooden jewelry box. Ben's pulse quickened. He opened the jewelry box. It was empty except for a few cheap plastic hair clips. He felt a pang of disappointment, but he kept looking. He picked up a thick photo album. He sat on the floor and began to turn the pages. There were pictures of Amelia, a woman with Crystal's warm eyes, smiling at the camera. Pictures of Crystal as a baby. Pictures of them at a park. Then, he stopped. His breath caught. It was a close-up picture of Amelia laughing. She had her hand up as if waving. On her finger, clear as day, was a silver ring with a blue stone. Ben stared. It was the ring. The exact same ring. Crystal was right. He carefully slipped the photograph out of its plastic sleeve. He held it under the light from the dusty window. There was no doubt. He placed the photo on the floor beside him. He turned back to the box. He began to look through the books, shaking them gently. Between the pages of an old cookbook, a folded piece of paper fluttered out. Ben picked it up. It was a sales receipt, faded and yellow at the edges. The ink was faint but readable. At the top it said * Maplewood Jewelers *. The item listed was * 1 silver ring, blue sapphire *. The price was written in numbers from many years ago. At the bottom, in a slanted familiar handwriting, was a signature. * Walter Henderson *. Ben sat on the floor of the quiet, empty house, the photograph in one hand and the receipt in the other. The pieces he had been feeling for finally clicked it into place. He knew what he had to do next. Ben walked into Maplewood Jewelers, the photograph and the old receipt held carefully in a clean folder. The store felt different. The air was heavy with waiting. Sarah was at the main counter, her face drawn with worry. Walter was in the back, the sound of shuffling papers drifting out. Sarah looked up and saw Ben's face. "Ben, what is it? Did you find something?" "I need to talk to you and Walter," Ben said, his voice steady. "And we need to call Mr. Cray to come down here." Sarah's eyes widened. "Victor Cray? Why?" "Please, Sarah. It's important." Sarah nodded and went to the back room. She came out a moment later with Walter. The old man looked exhausted. He had not slept. "What is this about, Ben?" Walter asked, his voice thin. Ben placed the folder on the glass counter. "I went to Crystal's old house today, with her aunt's permission. I was looking for anything about the ring." He opened the folder. First, he laid down the photograph. He turned it so Walter and Sarah could see. Sarah gasped. She put a hand to her mouth. "Oh my." The picture showed Amelia, Crystal's mother, smiling. On her finger was the silver ring with the blue stone. Walter leaned in. He took off his glasses, cleaned them, and put them back on. He stared at the picture for a long time. His face was pale. "It is the same ring," he whispered. "It is," Ben said. Then he placed the faded receipt next to the photograph. "And I found this, in a book." Walter's eyes dropped to the receipt. He picked it up with trembling fingers. He read the item description. He saw his own signature at the bottom from many years ago. His breath left him in a rush. He stumbled back a step, bracing himself on the counter. "I remember her," he said, his voice full of wonder. "A young woman, Amelia. She saved up for months. She was so happy when she bought it." He looked up, his eyes filled with a painful clarity. "The burglary." "What burglary?" Sarah asked softly. "Years ago, maybe 15 years. They broke the front window. They took many things. The records were a mess, papers everywhere." Walter spoke as if remembering a dream. "We fixed the window. We put new stock in the cases. I must have found this ring in the back. I thought it was unsold inventory. I forgot it had already been sold. I put it back in the case. I never logged it out. All these years it was sitting there waiting for her." The truth settled over them, quiet and immense. Ben looked at Sarah. "Can you call Mr. Cray? Ask him to come. Tell him it's urgent." Sarah made the call. Her voice was calm but firm. Victor Cray arrived 20 minutes later, his face still set in a scowl. "What now?" he demanded as he entered. "I want my refund." "You'll get your refund, Mr. Cray," Walter said. His voice was stronger now. "But first you need to see this." Walter gestured to the counter. Victor approached, looking suspicious. He glanced at the photograph, then at the old receipt. He read it slowly. His angry expression began to dissolve into confusion. "I don't understand," Victor said. Ben spoke. "Crystal's mother, Amelia, bought this ring from this store many years ago. Here is the proof. After a burglary, the record was lost. Mr. Henderson mistakenly put the ring back in stock. The ring you put a deposit on was a different ring, sold last month. The ring in the case, the one he gave to Crystal, was never his to sell. It was always hers. It belonged to her mother." Victor was silent. He looked at the smiling woman in the photograph. He looked at the old receipt. He looked at Walter Henderson's tired, honest face. The last of his anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a deep embarrassment. "So, the ring I was yelling about, it was never mine," he said slowly. "No," Walter said, "it was not. My ledger was wrong. My memory was wrong. I caused you great distress, and for that I am truly sorry. Your full deposit will be returned today." Victor Cray's shoulders slumped. He rubbed a hand over his face. I owe all of you an apology, especially that girl." He looked at the photo again. "I yelled at a child for wearing her dead mother's ring. I made a fool of myself." "We all got caught in a mess of old mistakes," Sarah said, her tone kind. "What matters now is fixing it." Victor nodded, a new respect in his eyes. "Yes, you're right." He turned to Walter. "Forget the refund. Put it towards something for the girl, a chain for the ring so she doesn't lose it. It's the least I can do." He gave a short, awkward nod to everyone and left the store, a much quieter man than when he entered. Walter picked up the photograph. He traced the image of the ring with his finger. "All this time," he murmured, "I didn't give her a gift. I gave her back what was already hers." He looked at Ben, his eyes shiny. "Thank you, Ben. You found the truth I was too blind to see." Ben just nodded. A heavy weight he had been carrying since the police came was finally gone. He thought of Crystal, alone in her aunt's apartment, thinking she had caused a disaster. He couldn't wait to tell her the news. Ben placed a careful hand on Walter's shoulder. "We need to call Crystal and her aunt. They need to hear this, today." Sarah was already reaching for the phone. "I'll call Darlene at work. She can bring Crystal straight here." An hour later, the jewelry store felt full of a nervous energy. Crystal stood close to her Aunt Darlene, her eyes darting from Ben to Walter. She looked scared, like she was waiting for more bad news. Victor Cray stood off to the side, his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. Walter Henderson stood behind the main counter. He cleared his throat. He looked old, but for the first time in days, he also looked clear-eyed. "Crystal," he began, his voice gentle. "I asked you all to come because Ben found something very important. He found the truth." Crystal just stared, her fingers tracing a circle on her palm. Ben stepped forward. He placed the photograph and the old receipt on the counter for everyone to see. "Crystal, I went to your old house. I found this picture of your mom." He pointed to Amelia's hand in the photo. "And I found this receipt. It proves she bought this exact ring from this store many, many years ago." Darlene leaned in to look, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Amelia," she whispered. Crystal took a small step forward. She looked at the picture of her mother's smiling face. She looked at the faded paper. She didn't understand what it all meant. Walter spoke again. "My store was broken into a long time ago. After that, my records were wrong. I made a terrible mistake. I found your mother's ring in the back room. I forgot she had already bought it. I thought it was a ring I still owned. I put it in my case." He looked directly at Crystal. "When I gave that ring to you last week, I was not giving you a new gift. I was giving you back your own property. I was returning your mother's ring to you, her daughter. I just did not know I was doing it." The words hung in the air. Crystal's brow furrowed as she tried to understand. Victor Cray spoke up, his voice much softer than before. "He's telling the truth, young lady. The ring I was so angry about was a different ring. This one," he pointed to the photo, "was always yours. I was wrong to yell. I am very sorry." Crystal looked from Victor's apologetic face to Mr. Henderson's earnest one. She looked at Ben, who gave her a small, sure nod. The meaning crashed over her slowly, then all at once. The ring was really her mother's. It wasn't just a look-alike. It was the actual ring. It had never been lost. It had been waiting for her. Her hand flew to her mouth. A small, choked sound escaped. Sarah, who had been quiet, now brought out a small, familiar plastic bag. Inside was the silver ring with the blue stone. She opened the bag and carefully slid the ring out. She held it in her open palm. "The police returned it this morning after Ben showed them what he found," Sarah said. "It belongs to you, Crystal. For real this time." Tears streamed down Crystal's cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of a relief so deep it shook her whole small body. She reached out with a trembling hand. Sarah placed the ring in her palm. Crystal closed her fingers around it. She held it tight against her heart for a moment, feeling its cool, familiar shape. Then, with great care, she slid it onto her finger. The blue thread was gone, so it spun loosely again. But it was home. She looked up at Walter Henderson, her eyes shining. "You found it for me," she whispered. Walter's own vision blurred. He shook his head. "No, child. You found it for yourself. You walked right up to it. You knew it was yours even when an old foolish man did not." He came around to the counter. He stood before her awkwardly. "A ring that loose is easy to lose. How would you like to come to the store on Saturday mornings? I could teach you how to clean jewelry properly. You could help Sarah with the displays. You could earn a little money, and we could find a good chain to keep your ring safe." Crystal's eyes grew even wider. She looked at her aunt. Darlene was smiling through her own tears, nodding yes. "You mean a job?" Crystal asked, her voice full of wonder. "A small job," Walter said, a tiny, rare smile touching his lips. "If you would like." Crystal nodded so fast her ponytail bounced. "Yes, yes, please." Ben watched the scene, a deep warmth spreading in his chest. He had helped put the broken pieces back together. He saw the look on Walter's face, a look of a man finally making peace with an old ghost. He saw Crystal, standing a little taller, no longer trying to disappear. The truth had not just fixed a problem, it had healed something. On Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, the bell above the door of Maplewood Jewelers gave its soft jingle. Crystal walked in, her hair neatly braided. She wore her cleanest jeans. The silver ring was on her finger, now secure on a delicate silver chain around her neck. She had insisted on the chain, not wanting it to ever get lost again. Walter looked up from the counter. He gave a small, formal nod. "Good morning, Crystal. You are right on time." "Good morning, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice still soft but clear. "Your first task," he said, placing a soft cloth and a small bottle of special cleaner on the glass. "You will learn to polish the display cases, not just the tops, the sides, every surface. It is about respect for the items inside." Crystal took the cloth. She worked slowly, carefully, just as he showed her. As she polished, she would sometimes glance down at the ring resting against her chest. A calm smile would touch her lips. Sarah arrived a little later, her young son Ethan in tow. "Good morning, team," she said cheerfully. She looked at Crystal's focused work. "I see the boss has you starting with the basics." "He is a very good teacher," Crystal said. Walter, overhearing, turned away to hide the pride on his face. Later that morning, Ben Miller walked in. He was not wearing his security guard uniform. He wore regular clothes. "Ben," Sarah said, "you're off today?" "Actually," Ben said, shoving his hands in his pockets, "I gave my notice. My last day of security is next Friday." Walter put down his tools. "You are leaving us?" "Not leaving town," Ben said quickly. "I went to the town council. I applied for a new position, a community liaison officer, someone who walks the streets, talks to people, helps with small problems before they get big." He looked at Crystal, who was listening. "I want to do that. I want to help." Sarah beamed. "Ben, that's wonderful. You'll be perfect." "It is a good use of your skills," Walter agreed, a note of respect in his voice. In the afternoon, during a quiet moment, Walter was at his desk in the back room. He stared at an old address book. His finger rested next to a name, *Lisa*. He picked up the phone. He put it down. He took a deep breath, thinking of a girl brave enough to walk into a store and speak her sadness. He picked the phone up again. He dialed the number, his heart pounding. It rang. A woman's voice answered. "Hello?" Walter's throat was tight. "Lisa, it is your father." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, a tentative, "Dad?" Walter closed his eyes. "Yes, I was wondering if you might have time to talk." In the main part of the store, Crystal was helping Sarah rearrange a tray of simple bracelets. A woman came in, the same one who had been there the day Crystal first saw the ring. She was wearing the blue blazer. She walked over to Crystal. "Hello," she said kindly. "I just wanted to say, I am so happy everything worked out for you." Crystal looked up surprised. "Thank you." The woman pointed to the ring on its chain. "It is even more beautiful knowing its story. A real treasure." As the woman left, Sarah put an arm around Crystal's shoulders. "See? This store isn't just about shiny things anymore. It's about people. You helped remind us of that." At the end of the day, Walter walked Crystal to the door. He handed her a small envelope. "For your work today." Crystal opened it. It was $20. Her eyes went wide. "Thank you. You earned it," he said. Then he added, "Next Saturday we will learn about different types of stones. The blue in your ring is called a sapphire." Crystal nodded eagerly. She stepped outside into the late afternoon sun. She didn't walk home right away. She walked through the park. She passed people she recognized. The man who had been working on his car gave her a friendly wave. The woman from the coffee shop smiled. She wasn't the invisible girl anymore. She was Crystal, the girl with her mother's ring, the girl who worked at the jewelry store. She was a part of the town. She sat on the park swing, not to hide, but to rest. She held the ring in her hand, feeling its shape. It was no longer just a memory of the past. It was a key. It had opened a door to a new friend, a new purpose for Ben, a softer town, and a piece of her own future. She let the ring fall back against her heart, right where it belonged, and pushed off gently with her feet to swing.